In this video, I will show you how to take an equation of an ellipse that is in general form. It's all flat, no parentheses or anything, and we will write it in standard form, which is like one of these, either this pink equation or the blue equation. And we're going to do that by completing the square. The first thing you need to do is to group together your x terms and your y terms. Alright, so these terms are going to go together. So if I rearrange things, then I've got 9x squared minus 18x. I'm going to leave a little bit of space for completing the square. And then I'm going to have plus 4y squared plus 8y. And I'm going to leave some space here. And then, of course, I have equals 23. So I need to complete the square for the blue part of the equation and for the red part of the equation. Well, the next thing I need to do is factor the leading coefficients of each part outside of parentheses. So I need to take this 9 and get it outside of the parentheses like this. So I will have x squared and minus 2x. And again, I'm going to leave that space there in order to complete the square. Now, in the red part of the equation, I need to take the 4 and factor it outside the parentheses. So that's going to leave me with y squared plus 2y, leave a space, equals 23. Now it is time to complete the square. So when you complete the square, we do half of the middle and then we square that. So half of this would be negative 1. And then if we square that, it actually gives us positive 1. So I'm going to put a plus 1 right here to complete the square. Now I need to add something to the right hand side to balance it out. You might think I would add a 1, but you'd be wrong. Because I didn't really just add a 1, I added 9 times 1. I really added a 9. You have to imagine doing the distributive property. What looks like a 1 is really a 9. So I need to add 9 to the right hand side. Similarly, on this side, again, I do half the middle squared. Half of this is 1, and then 1 squared is still 1. So I'm going to add a 1. And again, I need to add something to the right-hand side, but instead of adding a 1, I realize that this is really 4 times 1. I'm going to add a 4 to the right-hand side. All right, if I were to factor this trinomial, I would have 9 times, and this would factor as x minus 1 times x minus 1. Now over here, I'd have 4 times, and this would factor as y plus 1 times y plus 1. Equals, let's see, 36. So what I have now, really the point of completing the square is to make sure you get the same binomial twice. Because now I can do this. 9 times x minus 1 squared plus 4 times y plus 1 squared. All right, see how we are getting closer and closer to these equations. All right, now we have the x minus h squared and the y minus k squared. What we're missing is the number 1. No matter what, the standard form equation for an ellipse should be set equal to the number 1. So looking at this, how could I get a 1 over here on the right-hand side? Well, of course, what I need to do is divide everything by 36. All right, if I divide by 36, that's how I'm going to get a 1 right here. Okay, so I'm going to put my answer off to the side. So now what's going to happen here is 9 goes into 36 4 times. 4 goes into 36 9 times. So when I write my final equation, I will have x minus 1 squared over 4. And then I will have y plus 1 squared over 9. And of course, we will have this equal to 1, because that was our goal from the last step, 36 divided by 36. And we've done it. This would be a standard form equation of the ellipse that we were at first given in general form. All right, let's do that one more time. Again, to transform this general form equation into standard form, I need to group my x terms together, and I need to group my y terms together. So if I do that, I'm going to have 16x squared and then 32x. I'm going to leave a little space here in order to complete the square. But then I will have 4y squared and minus 8y and leave a little space. Equals 44. Now I must factor out the leading coefficient of each portion of the equation. So see the 16 right here? I'm going to factor that outside of parentheses. So that's going to leave me with x squared plus 2x, right? 32 divided by 16. Leave a space. And here I must factor the 4 outside the parentheses. And that's going to leave me with y squared minus 2y. Leave a space. Okay, time to complete the square. When we complete the square, we do half the middle and then we square that. So half of this is 1. 1 squared is still 1. So I'm going to put a plus 1 right here. So I need to add something to the other side to balance this out. You would think I would add a 1, but that would be wrong. This is not really a 1. It's really 16 times 1. So I need to add 16 to the right-hand side to balance this out. Similarly, for the red portion of the equation, half of this is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So I'm going to do a plus 1 right here. Again, I will not add 1 to the other side to balance this out because this is really 4 times 1. So I'm going to add a 4 on the right-hand side to balance that out. So I'm going to factor now. So this will factor as 16 times x plus 1 times x plus 1. At the red part of the equation will be 4 times y minus 1 times y minus 1. That's how this trinomial factors down. Okay, add all these together, you get 64. So the point of completing the square is to make sure you get the same binomial twice so that you can do this. x plus 1 squared. And then in this portion, we will write y minus 1 squared. And that is equal to 64. Now, in the equation of an ellipse, standard form has a 1 on the right-hand side. It's always a 1. So to get the 1 going, we need to definitely divide by 64. So of course that means we need to divide by 64 on both sides of the equation. So how many times does 64 go? How many times does 16 go into 64? Turns out that 16 goes into 64 4 times. That means 4 goes into 64 16 times. So we're basically reducing these fractions. All right, so that means the equation is going to be x plus 1 squared over 4 plus y minus 1 squared over 16. Of course, equal to 1. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.